All right, everybody. I'm with my old friend, Anthony Catenacci, owner of 905 Athletics. And we're talking about his specialty. It's the evolution of strength and mobility.
Yes.
Now, I know this guy's going to just talk forever about this.
That's a lie.
So much to say.
So much to say. So that's a lie. That's a lie.
It's a lie.
It'll be a conversation. It'll be a fun, engaging conversation like we always have.
You told me people say he's going on a Ranthony.
It's Ranthony. You'll get to meet Ranthony at some point today, I'm sure.
All right, dude. So, I know your story, but I'd like for you to share how you've kind of evolved your training. I know you started, it was a CrossFit gym.
Yep. I opened up a CrossFit gym, Original CrossFit and Athletics, in 2012 after much conversation through friends and years of training. I just kind of got to that point of, people saying I had a voice and I had to actually pursue it.
Yeah.
And finally, 2012, I opened a CrossFit gym after CrossFitting for about 2 or 3 years on my own. Looking back, I knew nothing. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I opened, I opened a facility and just started with what I learned through the level 1. And after a few years, I kind of went my own direction, and I started to kind of see some of the pitfalls. Like, coaching really changed me, and as much as I loved CrossFit training, I found myself diving more into CrossFit's roots and not so much where CrossFit seemed to go in the media side of things, where it became more about a sport, whereas I started to shift towards more of a movement practice. We can dive more into what that means later.
Yeah, that's cool, actually, because I know CrossFit as like all the WODs and people trying to break their time, and I know it kind of peaked maybe 7-8 years ago.
15, I'd say, was the peak.
Okay.
So that was around the time when I started to shift gears. I think it was just the coaching side of it, and seeing where just my clientele was going, and seeing the burnout, and seeing the unsustainability, and seeing how people would lose themselves in chasing a workout time. And so I slowly started to change my voice and shifted my own way of training, and found some coaches, and as much as I still stuck to what CrossFit's roots were, there was kind of a disconnect with what people thought CrossFit was. And I still think even just the term CrossFit is very broad. Yeah. It's not very definitive, and I think that was the issue. Is people were coming to the facility expecting one thing from what they saw on TV or the internet, and I was almost trying to do something a little bit different, but understanding what CrossFit was, I felt like I was still true to what it is. There was just a disconnect.
Yeah. So why don't you, because there's a lot of people who are going to watch this that don't have the background, obviously, but what would you describe as CrossFit's origin, or where it came from? Because you kind of mentioned that.
Right.
And then it was evolving away from that as you also evolved in a different direction. So go back to where it was.
So when I look at what CrossFit once was, I think in terms of, like, a lot of their branding initially was around virtuosity, which the definition of is doing the common uncommonly well. So being so good at something, you can't deny its ability, right? It's like you make something like an air squat look so perfect, and yet when you watch the WODs, or as a coach sitting back and watching people, you start to recognize the technique breakdown, which is obviously logical. People fatigue. You're in a state of stress. You're not going to be able to sustain such peak levels of positioning and optimal positioning through a workout as your body's reaching those peak levels of exertion. And
because that's what I would see, and that's what I experienced. Like, CrossFit to me wasn't about like that virtuosity that you're describing. Right. It's totally like you've got 8 minutes to do all that stuff and kill yourself to do it. So I'm like, the timing or the aspect of like competitiveness, whether it's against yourself or someone else's time, obviously is going to destroy form.
Yes, and I mean, when we look at the elite athletes, the elite CrossFitters, you don't see it as much. Which, I mean, this is why they're the top of their game. But I'm looking at this from like, I don't have 99% of the people that walk into my gym are not going to be competitive CrossFit athletes. They're going to be the everyday person with a 9 to 5 who sits in a chair most of the day and doesn't have like we talk about, like CrossFit was built around functional fitness, right? Functional fitness became all the rage because of CrossFit. But people don't have functional joints to be performing functional movements, and there needs to be kind of peeling back, so to speak, where people need to go back and kind of fix their own pitfalls before they really dive into that high intensity WOD idea. I do think there's a lot of value to the conditioning. There's a lot of value to the wadding. There's a lot of value to what CrossFit brought to the table. I just think things got lost in translation as the brand took off, and it kind of established its own identity. And we kind of saw that where over the last few years, it was almost like the CEO, who's now no longer part of CrossFit, but the CEO kind of was preaching health, which is more aligned with what I kind of wanted to go towards anyway. Yeah. And the sports side was pushing the sport. And I just, personally, I saw the downside of the sport, and I couldn't stand seeing my athletes either get hurt or be sore or complain about, aches and pains, and just that idea of the constant grind to me doesn't respond well to what fitness is about. To me, fitness is about rejuvenating, sparking the body, adding value to your day, not making you feel so broken down you can't move. And I have, a slew of clients who, I was that guy. Like, I was that guy that used to want to compete. I was that guy that wanted to push myself. And I had really great workout times, and I had really great walk times. I reached incredible strength numbers, but I was always sore, and I was always beat up, and I was always tired. And I shouldn't be waking up demolished every day. Fitness should provide for your day, not take away. So at that point, I had hired a coach, and it really shifted my gears, where here I was sending him videos, and for as strong as I was and as fast as I was, I still moved like shit. And so in seeing how my movement quality was as bad as it was, or what I would think would be bad, it really started to shift my gears.
So you talk about movement quality.
Yes.
Like, most people don't know what that is.
Right. But it's efficiency in your movement and looking. I mean, sometimes you can't describe it, but you know it when you see it. And I often use this, peak performance. But you've been to a Cirque du Soleil show. Mm-hmm. The definition of strength, the definition of effortless, grace, beauty, and movement. And I used to always say, anytime I go to competitions for CrossFit, the person who stood out wasn't the one that was moving the fastest. It wasn't necessarily the guy on the podium. It was the one who moved so beautifully. It was the guy that made, movement look effortless. Like, even to take this out a bit, but even, guys like Vince Carter on the basketball court, when he used to dunk, what made Vince Carter the best dunker of all time? How graceful and how effortless it looked.
Yeah, it was effortless.
Right. It was that. And that's kind of what I started to strive for in my training, and just give people that incentive to expect better of themselves. It's not just about, I don't look at the WOD time as your definitive answer of whether or not you're getting better. To me, it's there's more metrics to use than I shaved 5 seconds off my friend time, because sometimes it's like I just last time I did this CrossFit workout, my bar was on the other side of the gym. Now I just left the bar 5 feet away from my pull-up bar to be more efficient. Did I get fitter? No, I moved the bar closer, which obviously shifted the time. Yeah. Or it could have been. I would notice things like people would start comparing people at 6:30 in the morning versus 6:30 p.m. We used to write the workout times on the board, and you'd start to see it's like someone would come in at night and be like, "Hey, what did so and so get? What did so and so get?" They're already missing the point of the workout and already just trying to beat someone's time, when it's like that person was on 3 hours sleep, just had a kid, showed up at 6:30 this morning. Who cares what that person's time was? Yeah, it's totally irrelevant. And just seeing that culture, and I think there's benefits to the competitive culture, but there's also a lot of downsides. And just seeing that dynamic, it really made me want to go a different direction. And for years, I battled these ideas. And I mean, there's other reasons for shifting to my own brand. But that was kind of the big one, whereas my ideology was going more towards quality, more towards structure, and understanding balance in the body, and not just pushing for WOD times, pushing for that exhaustion. Even though that's what sells, I want to be able to do this when I'm 65, 70, 80 years old.
Yeah. So would it be safe to say that all that effort that the average consumer that goes into your gym or any kind of training, any other CrossFit gym or fitness in general, the efficiency of their movements, you're compromising form and the ability to improve your, I guess, your fitness. You're compromising it for the sake of like competition,
right?
And so you're kind of saying like throw away the competition component of it as far as comparing to someone else. Work on your form to the point where it's almost effortless, and you will see that your strength, your fitness, your healing, your repair, like everything is just it's better than.
Yeah. Like I think also just the like where I think CrossFit kind of came short. I mean, it's not. I shouldn't say that, but CrossFit in and of itself is a general physical preparedness program. So the whole idea is to be prepared for anything that life throws at you. So in that, the idea was constant variance in your training. So every day you do something different, which we've all heard. You got to mix it up. You got to confuse the muscles and all that BS.
But is it BS, or is it just like how they sell it is sort of
how they sell it is BS? I think there's some value to that, but I think people go about it the wrong way. I think you need variance in the movement. I don't think you need all around variance. And the thing, one thing I really noticed was, so variance for the sake of variance that a lot of CrossFit gyms do. It's like one day we do deadlifts, and then the next day
just so it doesn't get stale.
Right, and it sells. But after a certain period of time, like depending on your body weight, like let's say you get the average 180 pound guy, 130 pound lady, just knowing their weights and their body shapes, I would give you 2 years with them, I can tell you all their numbers. Like I know where they're going to get to. I know what I can extract out of them. After those 2 years of just constantly varying workouts, the only way to keep getting better, because that person's going to get bored if they're not seeing improvement, if they're not seeing changes.
Sure.
The only way to get better is to provide structure in their training. And that idea of constant variance isn't that. I think that can take you so far. Now, if your goal is just general physical preparedness, go nuts. Like, that's
a broad stroke, right?
Right, but it's you're still going to get bored. And if you don't get bored, then go crazy. But I think people, and I see it. Like I knew who my prime athletes were and where they got stale and where they got bored, and we had to take it back and peel some layers back and fix some certain things and provide structure into the training to get them to go further. And that was where I had to completely flip the model on its head, so to speak, with my own daily training and provide more structure in the day's workouts and not just focus on the WOD, the workout of the day. It just seemed to run its cycle, right? It's just like if I look at boot camp style training or something like what Orange Theory does, where you cycle through 3 different stations, it runs its course, and people find themselves saying, what's next? And I didn't want to lose people because they didn't know what was next. I wanted to be that guy that showed them what was next. And that's what led my whole branding into evolve through movement, evolve through strength, but just evolve the individual, where I began to utilize the movement practice to explore myself and kind of get to know myself more through my movement practice, as kind of silly as that might sound. But I always looked at it as that discipline, and I think we talked about this in the past, but like martial arts, where people will start a martial arts discipline and they will tie themselves to that idea. It's like I do Taekwondo, I do Jiu-Jitsu, I do whatever. It's like I do CrossFit. I do like CrossFitters. They're like the most adamant people in the world. They're so passionate about
it's a culture.
It is, right. Yeah. And
but it's funny because you mentioned like jiu-jitsu and karate and all that, but they have levels. So I think part of the level system is actually like it helps maintain and sustain itself in culture. I mean, people were doing karate like 100 years ago. I mean, now it's peaked and dropped off and maybe come up again. But I think the fact that there is a belt system, that there's a hierarchy, so that you're like now you're getting to the next level. CrossFit and other types of fitness don't necessarily have that, which maybe that's what you're suggesting is there needs to be a hierarchy maybe.
Yes, and like
am I spoiling something?
No. It's part of it actually. If you scroll all the way way through that guide, I have a thing at the end that kind of has like a tiered system.
Is that the movement and strength guide?
Yes, it's at the very. If you scroll all the way to the end,
down.
I created like a 5-star system to kind of show where.
Is it this day?
Yes, yeah, that's the guy.
I'm going to slide it down just a little so it's in the camera.
I just don't leave timelines because I don't want people, like, everyone's different. There's so many factors that can play into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like having that tiered system helps in knowing where you're going every time. And the only thing in fitness for the most part was always more weight on the bar, more weight on the bar, more weight on the bar.
Well, I guess to respond to that, that would be that tiering system to know like how do you measure your progress? Because I mean you can't, I mean, besides a competition like a bodybuilding I mean that's what, you know, in the 70s and into the 80s with Schwarzenegger and the Mr. Olympia, that era, that was the peak, right? And before that, if you're not at that level at the gym, you'd be like, well, how much can you bench? 250, 300, 350
all the time.
Well, I mean, but that's, you get that asked that because that's the level of understanding that people like, well, what do you squat?
Right.
And it's like, well, I don't, you would probably, I'm imagining you're like, well, it's not that I squat, but I'm able to, if you notice my ankle position in relation to my hip.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I can do 400 pounds, but really, did you see how I looked when I did it?
But it's both. Like sometimes I'll use examples. Like I can have two guys both deadlift 400 pounds. Mm-hmm. One guy can make it look like it was the heaviest thing he's ever lifted. One of them can make it look effortless. Yeah. The one that you're gonna remember is the guy that made it look effortless. Like you're like, wow, you can add so much weight to the bar. And even though he might feel like he can't, it's like you're looking at it like, oh my God, that looks so strong. It looks strong. It looks clean. It looks graceful.
So you're putting forth an idea that maybe, I mean, the average person would miss because like if someone's doing, two people doing squats or a deadlift, whatever, sometimes it's like who looks bigger is the one that gets the attention. It's like, oh, look how big their muscles are.
Yeah, and
but the other person could be like just very strong and has perfect form, but they don't have huge muscle development.
Well, I mean, a big part of strength is more neurological, not muscle tissue specifically.
Most people don't know.
No, they don't. They don't. But I mean, like, and this is where and I know we're kind of jumping all over because I can go so many directions with this conversation. Mm-hmm. But this is where when I brand myself as a strength and conditioning gym, it's very difficult to get people to understand what strength is. The first thing they think of is bodybuilding, right? They think of building big muscles. Yeah. Where strength is not bodybuilding. It's actually the opposite of bodybuilding. Bodybuilding lives more in a world of high repetition, burning out muscle, leading to bigger muscle tissue.
Muscle tear down to for a purpose.
Right. Whereas strength work lives in like a 1 to 5 rep scheme of mass motor unit production. And to really excel in strength and conditioning, we need both. Yeah. Right. And this is where understanding how to program comes into play. And this is where I feel I excel, is just understanding how to program to create that layering of strength over time. So when I look at fitness as a means to evolve the individual, it's just that. It's that there is no endpoint. Mm-hmm. Right. And like I was talking earlier about martial arts, where people identify with it and they want to get to that black belt, and it takes them like 5 years to get to that black belt, and eventually they lose themselves in the discipline. That they don't tell you that they do taekwondo. They just this is just who they are. I train every day. Mm-hmm. And they get to that black belt. You know what they're told? Now you're ready to learn. So it's like you think you've reached.
Forget everything you've learned to this point.
Right, and I kind of look at fitness as the same way, where it's like we keep layering this foundation. Mm-hmm. It's good. Like to me, the broader the foundation, the higher the pyramid of growth, right? And a lot of people live in a small world of fitness of doing the same things day in, day out, same 12, 20 exercises, never expanding beyond that. Whereas I'm saying, let's focus on specific things, build certain skills, and see where we can keep taking this. And we can really allow fitness to become that movement practice that takes us constantly moving forward. Yoga has the same thing. If you're not a big yogi, I take it.
How can you tell?
In the past, there was what is the name of it? Oh my god, the main sequence. Oh my god, this is gonna kill me.
The child
Ashtanga. No, Ashtanga yoga. Child pose. Ashtanga yoga comes in 4 sequences. There's 4 main sequences. If you traditionally practice Ashtanga yoga, you have sequence 1. When you finish sequence 1, you move to sequence 2. When you finish sequence 2, you move to, and every day your daily practice is an hour and a half for Ashtanga 1, and you do every movement until you finish that hour and a half. And if I'm at minute 45 and I can't do that specific pose, my practice is done for that day. Next day I come back and I hope to keep adding that layer to my practice. And when I finish Ashtanga 1, now my sequence is all of Ashtanga 1. Now I start jumping into Ashtanga 2. So now my day sequence is no longer an hour and a half, and I move to an hour 40. You keep layering over time and build up this skill base.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I see fitness as, is we can keep this going. Because the way it seems to be sold, it's just very much, it can get static.
Yes.
It can get very stale pretty quickly if you don't understand how to progress. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the things I'm trying to teach, and some people might look at it and be like, man, you're trying to teach too sophisticated high-level stuff sometimes, and it's really not. I plan on doing this the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. What is my rush? I just said it can get stale in a year. So if I can keep these goals and keep evolving myself and learning more about myself in the process of training, and really respecting the journey, which we've all taught is supposed to be the most important piece anyways, and it is, we really find fun in the practice again. Right. It's just, it's difficult when people are looking at the aesthetic side of, I need to lose weight because I'm going to Cuba, or I need, I just need to get in shape. It's like, you're going to get all that. Like, the principles are there. Exercise is exercise. We've still got to fix the plate. We've got to fix your stress. We've got to fix your a lot of other elements to get that weight loss, to get the aesthetics going, to get your body back in balance. But, the principles are still there. Whether we're chasing a high-level skill or just running around the block, we still need to understand the basics of exercise physiology. So
it's not that you're glossing over a point, but I think it's really important to touch upon is what you're doing and offering is very much in line with, like, rebalancing the body, like the physiological with the physical.
Yes.
I'm kind of connecting both, like, human anatomy and structure and movement with function of organs versus disease. Because I can see where people, when they are becoming ill, they don't move the right way anymore.
Right.
And maybe part of illness is the lack of proper movement or poor form, even in your normal walking.
Yeah.
Like, if someone can't walk, a straight path, what's going on? Like, there's some kind of imbalance. Like, I mean, I lean on Chinese medicine a lot in terms of the meridians and the different organ systems that are running through the arms and the legs into the hands and feet and the torso. So I have seen, like, physical deformity in someone who has an organ dysfunction. So it's like, if your spleen is weak, you're going to have, like, bunion formation. You're going to have, that's going to affect your arches and your stature. You start getting chronic knee pain and hip pain and all that. So you can, there's so, it goes so deep. Yeah. So I like how, I think there's an opportunity for people to actually understand the importance of not just proper posture, as I'm leaning on my chair, but, and it's funny because as soon as you mention posture, instantly everyone kind of just straight lines, right? Because we have this innate understanding. It's like, I know you can't help it. Because how do you talk about posture and you're just going to stay like this? So there is some kind of aspect of our body has an inclination to do what's proper and normal because there's an innate perfection in it. So if there's a perfection in it, it's a necessity. It must have residual effect. So if you're not walking properly, not standing properly, and then leading into, if you're not doing exercise properly, if you're not doing the proper form, you can gain some benefits if your benefits are focused on strength or times or whatever.
Yeah.
But you were actually doing more harm than good.
Right. And that was, I mean, a big thing about what I was seeing too is I mean, I don't know if it was to that degree. You would know that side of it more than I would. But just seeing people who who didn't have function, you know, something was off. And I could see by the angles, I could see by their movement quality and their patterning that something was off. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, you know, tightness, whether it's more, you know, bodily dysfunction, whether there's something else there. This is where I have to dive out.
Have you ever been able to put your finger on it and see like someone that's coming in? It usually is like doing great form, but then like something happens, whether it's stress in their life or they're not feeling well, and their form or something is just off or tweaked. I know, throwing you a curveball.
No, I haven't. I'd have to think about that. I mean, I can definitely think of people whose movements are off. Or who have been out. I can think of a lot of people who are super tight and had no range of motion. Yeah. But to specifically identify, like to me the big one, and I could be wrong when I say this, but this was something I pulled from Kelly Starrett, who's really big in the CrossFit space. You know, people with flat feet. Oftentimes the feet aren't the issue, and I could have been one of them. You know this. I had Achilles issues for years, and I fixed my Achilles through, you know, fixing my hips, and it was something that was never taught to me. It was always, you know, treatment on the Achilles. I'd go play soccer, and then I'm, you know, crawling to get inside my house. Yeah. And I mean, it was terrible for like 4 years. I had to stop playing soccer. I had to stop jumping. I couldn't skip. I couldn't sprint. Like it was terrible. And going back and doing a lot of mobility work on my hips and understanding how to fix the hips. But as I was saying, with the feet, if people got flat feet, sometimes it's not the feet that are flat. It's that the hips are internally rotated. Right. So when you start to build up strength in your posterior chain on the backside of your body, build up some glutes and hamstrings and get your adductors firing, learning how to squat, learning how to deadlift, etc.
That's so interesting.
You start to notice the arches start to form because it's the hip is just externally.
Well, as you describe, right? It makes sense. And I mean, we have people coming in that get like orthotics, and I think that's important. But as you're describing, it's like, okay, hip rotation or external rotation. Like now, it's like I can actually visually see how an arch would have to form.
Right.
Because
it's just taking that joint.
Because if your hip has come in like this, right, of course you're putting internal pressure, right?
Exactly. And I see it a lot. And it's you know, it's kind of like it's comparing to a car, right? If my alignment is off and my right tire keeps balding, do I keep replacing the tire or fix the alignment?
Put orthotics on the tire.
You put a bigger tire and you hope that it doesn't bald. And that was eye-opening for me. And I didn't even think of my foot pronating to create stress on my Achilles, which was also the knee that I messed up. Yeah. So like to me, I kind of linked everything together. And when I was going through, when I was learning through my coaches in the past, and one of the big things they started doing with me was understanding different variations of deadlifts, right? And CrossFit really only taught me one style, but when I started to really emphasize glute hand work, and really I just understand strength on the backside of my body, everything changed. Where my posture improved, my on both ends, my shoulders and my hips, and just that alleviated so much pressure and pain. Yeah. I had an issue years back with a physio, and this was actually something that really started to spiral for me. I had an elbow tendonitis. I couldn't grip for like 5 weeks, and I finally went to my physio, and he's running through all these diagnostics on me, and he's like, "Oh no," he's like, "Your right shoulder externally rotates properly, your left one doesn't." He's like, "So you're just compensating down the chain, and you're putting too much strain on your forearm." I'm like, "What are you talking?" I'm like, "I have pain here. What are you talking about my shoulder for?" And it just got me understanding a lot more, and it made me question things, and it opened my eyes to where, like, the foundation of my whole program now is let's focus on the hips, let's focus on the shoulders. That's what's going to keep the spine intact. We talk about core strength all the time, but you want to talk about a rant? This will be a rant. We talk about core strength all the time, and it's so easy to just lay the blame on a weak core. And this is what we're told all the time when we go to physio. It's like, "Oh, your core is weak. Can't press overhead, your core is weak." Sometimes it's not that the core is weak. It's that the shoulder doesn't articulate, or it's that the hips don't articulate. Is that core strength? Kind of, because when we talk about core, we're talking everything from above the knee to the shoulder. But it's misleading because people will start doing planks. They probably don't need planks. They need to create space in their hips. They need to create space in their scapula and shoulder.
A lot of people get injured planking.
I find planks like so...
It's too static, and you have to hold it for too long. You probably do muscle strain.
And like I just find it's not getting to the root cause of the problem. So like I won't be, I don't know if I can show it on video and stuff, but if I'm looking at someone try to press a barbell over their head, right? And oftentimes people got really crummy shoulders. The bar ends up here, right? Their shoulders just don't flex overhead.
Yeah.
And what happens is if I ask them to get the bar over the head, they have to arch their spine to get it there.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it and seeing like their shoulders locked. They're up. Their external rotators just don't create that flex position overhead.
Why is that?
It could be multiple reasons. To me, a lot of people in the gym are anterior dominant, meaning
they lean forward.
That, but like everywhere, it's mirror muscles. Right? We're always looking in the mirror, and this is what we're working out. But all the stuff that matters is on the backside of the body.
Yeah.
Right. Like all the important posture. Right. It's weakness on the backside of the body. If your upper back is strong, the muscles will be pulled into place, and your posture will naturally engage.
Yeah. Everything. It's almost like a facelift.
Yes. Kind of. But, so because of our nature in a gym to do either the same exercises, not understand joint health, not understanding how a joint functions, we overwork certain muscles, underwork others, and this is what creates imbalance. These imbalances lead us to make us more susceptible to injury.
Yeah.
And so this person who can't flex the shoulders overhead, that has to arch the spine, is that a core issue or is that a shoulder issue? It's a little bit of both.